Hi, I'm Alyssa Cirincione, and you're watching Meet SRU Faculty, where I'm going to interview different Slippery Rock faculty members each week to gain insight on their achievements throughout their career. From growing up in Endicott, New York, getting her PhD at the University of Idaho, to teaching many geology-related courses here at Slippery Rock University, Dr. Schiappa has had many accomplishments throughout her career. She is here today to talk all about those accomplishments, as well as her experiences throughout her research. I'm Alyssa Cirincione, and you're watching Meet SRU Faculty. Welcome, Dr. Schiappa.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing well, thanks. So you started out getting your Bachelor of Arts in Geology at the State University of New York, and then went to Boise State University to get your master's degree in paleontology, right?
Yes.
And earth science education. Then from there, you received your PhD in paleontology, and is it stratigraphy?
Stratigraphy.
Oh, see, I should have, stratigraphy, okay, from the University of Idaho.
That's correct.
So tell me what sparked your interest in studying these sciences.
Well, it actually started after I completed my bachelor's degree. Because after I completed my bachelor's degree, I went on to teach high school. And I was teaching high school biology. And I loved teaching high school biology. So I was really interested in life. And when I was working on my bachelor's degree at the State University of New York in Plattsburgh, I also took an Earth history class where you learned about how life evolved throughout Earth's time. And so you're really looking at life. And then I was teaching biology, and I really liked the life aspect of our world. And then after, when I was working on my master's degree, I had to pick a topic. And there was all sorts of avenues in geology that I really liked. But why I picked paleontology is I went on a field trip to West Texas and with several very famous paleontologists. Famous in my mind, you know, the person on the street wouldn't know who they were, but they were famous to me. And so they took me on this field trip, and they were so kind and took me aside and were teaching me all these little things. And I was so impressed by their manner, their mentorship, that I said to myself, I want to be just like them. And I want to be able to teach students about how life has changed throughout time. And so that's how I got involved in paleontology.
Very cool.
And stratigraphy is the study of the stacking patterns of rocks.
Okay. And
fossils are preserved in those sedimentary layers. So we're looking at sedimentary layers over time. Those fossils are preserved in those sedimentary layers. And so the two kind of go hand in hand. You can't really be a paleontologist without being also a stratigrapher.
Okay, so they work together.
They definitely work together.
Okay, very cool. Nice. So you taught at Boise State University for several years, and then came to Slippery Rock University in 2002.
Correct.
Why Slippery Rock University?
Well, I came here, it's kind of an interesting story. I was looking for, did not have a full-time job at Boise State. I was an adjunct faculty on soft money, which meant every semester or every year I had to search for money to support myself. So I had to keep writing grant proposals to try to fund my research, fund teaching, and the department would pay me a little bit to teach just so I would remain employed. And so after I got my PhD, I really wanted to get a full-time teaching position because I wanted to go back to teaching. And my husband saw the ad for Slippery Rock University, and the head of the search committee was an individual, Michael Stapleton, who is a friend of my brother's. And my husband said to me, "Isn't this the Michael Stapleton we know?" And I said, "Yeah." So I called him on the phone, and he said, "Oh, Tam, you should apply. This is a great position, and you fit it perfectly." And so I said, "Oh, okay." So I applied, and I interviewed, and then I was offered the position. So that's why we came here.
Very cool. Yeah. So your situation with Boise, that kind of sounds illegal in a way. Was that
Oh, that's very common. That's very common. it was a research associate or research professor position. And so I would remain employed as long as I could support myself getting external funding.
Yeah.
And then they did hire adjunct faculty to teach courses, the introductory courses, or maybe a lab class. But it was, you know, hit or miss, and it wasn't very good money. They just pay you per credit. And so it wasn't, you know, getting rich on it, but no educator does. But I mean, it was very difficult because I never knew from one year to the next if I would be employed.
Yeah.
So it's a hard road, and there's a lot of PhD candidates, or, you know, people out there with PhDs that actually do that for a living. They just continually write research grant proposals to fund a position at an institution so they can keep doing what they like to do.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's scary. You know, you
Yeah, it
always
is
want a
scary.
secure position.
That's right. It's scary because
Yeah.
there's no benefits typically affiliated with it.
Right. Definitely. But, you know, some people have to do what they have to do.
Right.
You know, and if you enjoy it, that's what makes it even harder.
Right.
It's
Right.
just- well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you found this.
Oh, I love my job here at Slippery Rock. I have the best job in the world.
Yeah.
I can take students into the field. I teach them paleontology. We have great students here. There's flexibility in our job. We teach the course. I teach the courses that I like to teach.
Right.
So it's fun. I enjoy coming to work every morning.
Yeah, good, and that's all that matters.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It really does, because it would be awful to have a job where you hated going every single day.
Exactly. Yep.
Oh, you have to work for so long. You might as well enjoy it, right?
Exactly. Yep, and then it doesn't feel like work, right?
Right. It doesn't feel like work.
Yep, perfect. All right, so you teach so many different courses here at Slippery Rock, including physical geology, concepts of evolution in the fossil record, oceanography, geotechniques, and stratigraphy. You knew it. You knew I was gonna. So, am I missing one?
Let's see.
Or did I cover them all?
Physical geology. You said physical geology. Earth
Yes.
history.
Earth history.
Yeah.
Okay. So, basically, with everything that you teach, what is your favorite subject to teach and why?
Oh, my favorite subject is both Earth history
Okay.
and concepts of evolution in the fossil record and paleontology.
Okay.
That's my training, and that's where my passion is to teach about how life has changed throughout Earth's 4.6 billion year history. It has a very long history. Life has changed dramatically since it began, 3 billion years ago. And so it's a real interesting to me. So that to me is what I really like to teach. I enjoy all the other classes, but my favorite classes are Earth history and paleo.
Very cool. And stratigraphy goes along with that, like you said.
Stratigraphy goes along with that, that's right.
Yes.
And in our majors class, the students take stratigraphy before taking paleontology or concepts of evolution. So they have that background and they know about, depositional environments and processes that are occurring, and they understand the stacking relationships of sedimentary rocks. And then when we can add the fossil data to it, and
Okay.
so they've developed a very good understanding of
Right.
that.
So paleontology is just elaborating on stratigraphy, basically. In a way.
In a way. In
Okay.
a way it is, yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Very neat. So, all right, we're going to cut to a commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to talk to Dr. Schiappa about women in the sciences.
The Marvelous Wonderettes, the dazzling New York musical theater hit, featuring pop classics of the 50s and 60s.
Morning sugar in the evening, sugar after supper. Now it's in his kids. That's why I felt more the leader of the pack. Lord knows to my surprise,
The Marvelous Wonderettes, on stage.
Slippery Rock University, Saturday, March 9th at 7:30. Call 724-738-2018 for tickets.
Welcome back to Meet SRU Faculty. I'm Alyssa Cirincione, sitting here with Dr. Schiappa, a geology professor here at Slippery Rock University. So let's talk about women in the sciences. You mentioned earlier that there are only 5 women. Is it in the geology department or the whole science department?
Oh, in our department.
Okay, your department.
So I teach in the geography, geology, and the environment department.
Right.
And within that department, there are 5 women faculty. I have to make sure. Let me make sure. One. Yes, there are 5 women.
Okay.
which is fairly odd. It's kind of odd to have that many faculty in a science department.
But
That
who are
many
women.
faculty, women that are women.
Yeah.
Because when I went to school, there were no women geology professors. So I graduated in '83 with my bachelor's degree. There were no women faculty in the geology department.
Wow.
I graduated with my master's degree in the 90s, 91, 93 or something, and no women in the department. When I got my PhD, there were also no women faculty. It is rare to have so many good women. Well, they're all good, but having women as faculty members in a geography department.
Yeah, definitely. So what about when you taught at Boise? Were there any women in your department then?
No, there were no
No,
women.
okay.
There were no full-time tenure track women in the department at that time. And I was the only woman who was on staff, as a staff person, teaching classes and conducting research. So I was surrounded by all men.
Oh, wow.
And it makes for some difficulties,
Right.
right? Because men typically don't have the same understanding as a woman has, and there are other issues that women may face that men don't face. And there's the childbearing issues that women, are faced with, and men don't typically worry about. I mean, they
Right.
do,
Yeah.
and now, as in the 21st century, there is becoming more equity.
Right.
In a relationship, there's becoming more equity on campuses. There's more equity in the workplace.
Yeah.
But prior to this, there really wasn't. My mentors were all men.
Yeah.
And they had women at home that took care of everything for them. So they were free to come to work at 7 o'clock in the morning and go home at 9 o'clock or whatever time it was when they were ready to go home, and they didn't have to
Right.
worry about anything at home.
Right.
So the promotion and the progress and the research progress was much greater than any woman's, because they were expected at that time. They were expected to be home, watch the children, get the children, make the dinner. Now it's not so much that way.
Right.
I
It
mean,
certainly has changed
it
over the
really
years.
has changed.
Yeah.
And which is benefiting women in the workplace.
Yeah, definitely. So would you say, with the 5 women in your department, do you think that's a significant increase?
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Yes. And the departments that I have come from still have maybe 1 woman in their department, but they don't have. There's not 5 women in the department.
Right. Yeah.
And I think one of the departments still has no women on as faculty.
Oh, wow. Yeah, do you know what department that is, or you don't know by?
I'm not sure.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. That's something to look into, though, definitely.
Yeah, and
Yeah, because I'm
that's-
interested in knowing which one that is.
And it's a benefit for the women who are interested in our science.
Mm-hmm.
They see that women can be successful in the geological sciences. They have a role model. Mentors are there for them that can be very supportive as they continue through their education.
Right.
I was fortunate. I had a lot of good male mentors, but there were still issues that they couldn't really relate to me over.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was
Not that
thinking.
a woman can.
Right. Yeah, because you've come so far, obviously, since you've been in school with all these male mentors.
Right.
So I'm sure, like you said, that was difficult
Yeah.
in relating to them and them relating to you.
Right.
But here you are now.
Yeah.
So they had to have helped in some way.
They did. I have a lot of respect for them.
Yeah.
They will always be my mentors, and they are a couple of them are my heroes.
Yeah. Very nice.
But it would have been nice to maybe have a woman along the way to
Right.
help encourage me, and
Yeah,
have
definitely.
me, give me a pat on the back every once in a while.
Right.
But-
Say, oh, women can do this.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely.
Right. I was just headstrong, and I was going to do it. And there were a lot of women in my program that never finished.
Oh, wow.
Because of various reasons. I mean, there were a lot of men that never finished too, but there were, several women that, had to, kind of quit what they were working on or just couldn't take it anymore and
Right.
Either got a different job or stayed home.
Yeah. So, do you think the number of women scientists in any of the sciences is going to increase within the next, let's say, 5 years?
Yes. Yes, I do. In the 1800s, the mid-1800s, women weren't even allowed in the classroom. Women weren't allowed to obtain an education in the sciences. And then in the early 1900s, they were, or the late 1800s and into the early 1900s, they were now allowed into the universities. However, they could not even sit in the classroom. There is a famous woman geologist, Florence Bascom, who obtained her PhD never setting foot in a classroom. She had to listen to lectures in the hallway. She had to work on labs behind a screen because they didn't want her distracting the men in the room, or I guess, I don't know why, who knows why. That may have been the reason, but so she, is a pioneer for women in the sciences because she persevered through, these hurdles. She was able to overcome these hurdles and actually obtain a PhD in geology. One of the first women to obtain a PhD in geology in the 1889 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And that is amazing to me.
Yeah.
Not being able to sit in a classroom, having to sit in the hallway and take notes. I can't even imagine being in a math class and having to learn calculus from sitting in the hallway.
Exactly.
Not even being,
just from hearing.
Just from hearing.
Yeah.
And to me, that's spectacular. I don't know how she did it. I mean, she was driven.
Wow.
I would have given up.
Yeah.
But now, right, you are in classes, and I look around my science classes, there's 50-50 split.
Yeah.
And in some of my classes, I've had more women than I've had men.
Right.
So I think, now we're reaching this point where everything's fairly equitable and women have the same equal rights as men. And we still struggle with salaries in some areas.
Yeah.
And there is also in physics, that science, still very few women going into physics.
Oh, okay.
Very few women physics professors.
Why do you think that is? Or there's really no rhyme or reason?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It used to be that there was very few geology women in the geological sciences. Now that's increased. It really started with chemistry and biology, the lab sciences. So biology, there has been a lot of women in the biological sciences and a lot of women in chemistry in a lab. And then as time has gone on, more women have been involved in the field sciences, which is geology, the geological sciences, and earth sciences. And then, but physics is still a little behind, and I'm really not sure why that is.
That's interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't have even thought of that. I took a physics class actually here, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why that is.
Yeah, definitely. So, with all of the the courses that we talked about that you teach, is it every year you take students on class trips?
I do. I take a lot of trips with students. As a matter of fact, in just a couple of weeks, I'll be traveling to the Bahamas.
Ooh.
With the students. Yes.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, 16 students.
So is it just any SRU student that can sign up?
Yes, this is through international services.
Okay.
And this trip is offered through that office, and any SRU student could participate on that trip if they were interested.
Oh, very
we
nice.
have a lot of our majors that are going on the trip this year. And maybe it's because they hear me talking about it, that they want to go. They hear other people that have been from our department that have participated that say that's a good trip, you should go on it.
Yeah.
But in the past, we've had accounting majors that go, and theater majors, and dance majors. The spectrum of students here at Slippery Rock have participated.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great opportunity too.
Yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah.
And we take them to look at the island and tropical environments. So we snorkel every day and invest and do surveys of the reefs. We look at the carbonate environments, the tropical environment. We look at life in tidal pools. We talk about how caves are formed because we'll go caving. We look at distribution of plants on the island, and because we are on a small island, and so we talk about island life, the culture of the island, the history of the Caribbean, because it is in the Caribbean. So we'll look at the history of that area, the pirates and the sugarcane plantations, and which have not been able to sustain on the islands, and so we talk about why that is, and we look at ruins, and so it's very historical and
definitely
natural
related
history.
to geology.
Yeah, it's very, very much so.
Yeah, definitely. That's exciting. Is it too late to sign up?
Yeah, unfortunately. Next year.
So are the trips affordable? How?
Through international services, yes.
Yes.
There's typically one. So the Bahamas trip that we go on is the most expensive, and that is through international services. And there's typically one set fee for all the trips that are offered through international services.
Okay.
So everybody that goes on an international experience over spring break, I'm pretty sure everybody pays the same amount.
Okay.
And then, but then there are other trips. I take students on field trips on the weekends. We do a department field trip during the year as well. And so,
how far away do you usually go for the department field trips and the weekend trips?
Well, we have to be able to get there on a weekend, right? So, the last department field trip we took was to Shenandoah National Park, and so that was about a 5-hour drive.
Okay, so it's just driving.
Yeah.
Just okay.
Yeah, we've taken a bus, piled everybody in a bus, and gone on a field trip. We take several vans. So it just depends on where we're going.
Yeah, definitely. So where have you gone in the past for your international spring break trips?
For my international spring break trips, I've only taken students to the Bahamas.
Oh, to the Bahamas. Is it the same every year then?
Yes, I go to the same place.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. So I saw you've been to Nevada.
I do.
Was that specifically for your own research?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me what you were researching while you were in Nevada.
Well, my specialty is looking at externally shelled cephalopods, or ammonoids, which are a squid with a shell.
Okay.
So, and if you know at all about the modern nautilus, which are the extant form of the ammonoids, which are now extinct, those are what I and I study them from a particular period in time, which is about 280 million years ago.
Oh, wow.
So they have the locations from which I can collect them are, there's not very many locations around the world where I can collect these ammonoids from this particular time period. And one area just so happens to be in Nevada. So I have gone to Nevada to collect these ammonoids so I can identify them, and then I can use them to make an interpretation about what the environment was like 280 million years ago in this region of Nevada.
Yeah.
And they are marine and swimmers, so 280 million years ago in this particular area, in Nevada actually, was covered by a large sea.
Oh, okay.
So I've been using that ammonoid data to help delineate the position of the sea, so where it actually was, and what was the extent of the sea.
That's very cool. That's very interesting too.
Yeah.
You know, what have you found so far? Are you allowed to discuss that within your research?
Well, I have the ammonoids that we've found. There are, 9 different genera, or no, actually more than that, maybe 16 different genera.
Oh, wow.
I've named several species that are coming out of this particular location. And what we have found is that within this basin, this sea area, there have been deep water areas and shallow water areas, and that the ammonoids, because they're fairly different and fairly extensive, that certain genera had a preference to deep water or shallow water. So we were able to determine where the shallow areas are and where the deeper areas are in this basin.
Oh, yeah.
So we actually have been able to reconstruct what the basin used to look like. This marine basin used to look like.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Very, very, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
And then we've also been able to look at circulation patterns within this basin. So cold water coming from the poles, warm water coming from the equator, and how that has entered the basin. So we've really been able to reconstruct the dynamics of this marine area, this marine basin, which is interesting, reconstructing these past environments. And that's what I like about what I do, is I get to reconstruct what it used to be like in the western part of the U.S. 280 million years ago. There was this ocean there that had deep water parts, shallow water parts, and it had these interesting organisms that were living in it.
In a way, you're reliving history, right? Would you say?
Yeah, that's very true.
Definitely. So how long do you stay on your trips when you go to research?
When I go
Usually.
into the field, I can be there either for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because it's fairly easy to get to. I can go there for 10 days or something and get enough samples collected, and then I bring everything back to the lab.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. So that's all I have for you.
Okay.
Thank you so much again for joining
you're
us. It was
welcome.
very nice talking with you and
Thank you for having
getting to
me.
know more about you.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, well, that is all we have for you today on Meet SRU Faculty. Thank you for joining in on today's discussion, which was filled with a lot of valuable information. Make sure you tune in next time. Once again, this is Dr. Schiappa, and I'm Alyssa Cirincione with Meet SRU Faculty.